Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the first week or so here of the NBA preseason. It hasn't quite been a week yet as of time of recording, but we're pretty close. But with the preseason underway, there's not too much to talk about other than going over some overreactions, some hot takes from some people that I've seen out there based on you know their team's first one or two preseason games. Obviously, there's a lot to be excited about, but sometimes that excitement leads to some statements that are maybe a little bit premature, both in terms of positives and negatives. So uh, I've got a list here of just a handful, positive and negative, and we're just going to sort of go through it and maybe talk about, you know, why it might be a little bit of a hot take or an overreaction. So, uh, without any further ado, let's get into it. We'll start on the positive side, just sort of work our way down the list. First and foremost, we've got for the Dallas Mavericks, the performance from Jaden Hardy so far basically has people thinking, Hardy might be ready to be a regular rotation piece, get more minutes, and maybe be sort of that first guy off the bench behind Luka and Kyrie. Through the first 3 games of the preseason, he has put up 44 total points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, on 40% shooting overall. Not bad, not terrible. So those numbers have a lot of people thinking maybe Hardy's ready to take that next step and become, a 20 to 25 minute per game kind of guy. Like I said, first guy off the bench maybe, after in the guard spot at least, after Luka and Kyrie. The point total has been impressive, but the reason why I think this is a little bit of an overreaction is when you take a look at the rest of the numbers for him. He does still have 9 turnovers across those 3 games, which is not great. That shooting percentage is 40%, which does look pretty good on paper, but he's also taken 40 shots across those 3 games to get his 44 points. And I'm not sure he's going to get that many opportunities in the regular season, right? 40 shots across 3 games is a relatively high volume for a guy playing the minutes that Hardy normally plays in the regular season. So I definitely think he's played well enough to get more time for sure and play a bigger role, but I think people are looking at that big sort of 44 points number and maybe taking too much value out of that. I don't think he gets the offensive opportunities right out of the gate in the regular season to keep up that kind of production. But we shall see. But overreaction number 2, we go to the Golden State Warriors. The idea here is that the Warriors have solved their depth problem, and Kuminga has finally sort of broken through, right? The patience has paid off for Golden State. Now, bench depth was an issue for them, right? In the previous playoff run, after the starters, things kind of fell apart. So you take a look at their first preseason game, 3 players off the bench scored in double figures. Kuminga, Podzimski, I think is how you pronounce his name, and Moody all hit double figures. Kuminga himself had 24 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple of blocks, and shot 57% from the field. So all very impressive. All basically exactly what you wanted to see from the Warriors bench in their first preseason game. But it was literally one preseason game here. So is it possible for these bench pieces to do this consistently? We quite literally don't know yet. We haven't gotten to see it. Kuminga leading the way, though, that is certainly something encouraging. The Warriors have been waiting to see that breakthrough moment from him for quite some time. So this is absolutely a step in the right direction. But, is it sustainable in the regular season? That's always the question. I'm not really sure. But moving along to, well, this one actually involves kind of 2 teams, both the Thunder and the Spurs. The sort of hot take here is that the Wembanyama versus Holmgren matchup will become this generation's Magic and Bird, LeBron, Carmelo. Well, actually, the LeBron Carmelo one didn't really play out as a direct rivalry, but that kind of hype going into their careers, and I think maybe that's a little too much. We can take a little bit off the gas there for these two, Wemby and Holmgren. They're both incredibly exciting players. There's a lot of hype surrounding them. The game that they played against each other was exciting. It was impressive. Their stat lines were both very, very good. But declaring them the sort of generational rivalry here feels like it might be a little bit too early to put that kind of extra pressure on a pair of guys who still haven't played a regular season game yet, right? Holmgren's coming back from his injury. Wembanyama Yama is in his rookie season. So there's already a lot of hype. There's already a lot of pressure on them. I think we maybe sort of wait it out, because as exciting as they are, I don't see either one of them as being ready to be sort of faces of the league in their first full season of playing. So be excited for sure, but tone it down just a little bit. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so we're going to move things out east next, taking a look at the Boston Celtics, and the meme / hot take / overreaction out there is Peyton Pritchard. The jokes are basically at this point that he might be threatening for Drew Holiday's spot. He scored over 20 points in each of the Celtics' first 2 preseason games. I mean, this one's pretty easy. It's incredible seeing Pritchard do that. He's been a nice bench piece for the Celtics this whole time since he's been there. So it would be nice if he could sort of become more of an offensive threat as well. But with the Celtics as currently constructed, he's not going to have the opportunities for that, right? When the starters are on the floor, the offense will run through them. Maybe he gets some run as the leader of a second unit here. That would be nice. But to the tune of 20 points per game in the regular season, not really gonna happen. If it does, I'll be happy to eat my words, but it's encouraging, but it's not really a trend moving forward. But that moves me along to one last point here in the positives column for the Brooklyn Nets, and that is the overreaction, quote unquote, that Ben Simmons is back. Right? He played in that preseason game. He looked pretty good. He had 10 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists, and a steal with just 1 turnover in one half of play. He really did just play one half of that game. So it's certainly encouraging, for sure, for a guy who has not played for a long time due to a combination of injury and mental health and holding out, or however you want to address that saga. The fact that he's in a Nets jersey and playing in any capacity has to be encouraging. And that stat line through a single half is pretty damn good. But, I would hesitate to declare the backness of Ben Simmons just yet, right? Let's see a little bit more in the preseason. Let's see a little bit more, obviously, once the regular season gets underway. And then, by all means, we can declare Ben Simmons to be sort of back in 100%. But at this point in the Ben Simmons saga, I have to see it to believe it, right? And I have to see it in more than just a 1 or 2 game sample size. But it's good news for the Nets no matter what, right? Ben Simmons is a talented player when he plays. So we'll keep an eye on that. But now we'll move over to maybe the negative column here. Some situations where fan bases and analysts are being maybe a little bit over dramatic. Starting with the Los Angeles Lakers and the talk around Christian Wood. A lot of talk basically saying Christian Wood is not worth it, shouldn't be on the team, etc., etc. He did not play particularly great in the Lakers' first 2 preseason games, but I think the thing a lot of people sort of seem to not be remembering here with Christian Wood is that he doesn't have the contract that he did with Houston or with Dallas. The Lakers got him on basically, I think, the vet minimum for his service time. So they're not paying him a whole lot of money. He might not be useful. That is true. But even if he sucks on the floor, the cost is not going to be particularly high. They basically kind of just took a flyer on a guy who wasn't receiving any offers. The only way I think Christian Wood is a real concern here is if he causes problems off the court or has issues in the locker room or affects the team's chemistry. If that happens, then, for sure we can revisit that conversation. But in terms of his performance on the floor, The Lakers can afford to have him just be terrible because they're not really paying a crazy amount of money for him. Keeping it in the Pacific Division, though, we'll talk about the Kings. A lot of people overreacting to that first Kings preseason game, saying that Domantas Sabonis is still getting sort of, I guess the phrase is exposed here, right? Or saying that he hasn't really recovered from his poor playoff performance against the Warriors. And a little bit of that is true. The numbers in that preseason game were not fantastic, right? I don't think he reached double figures in scoring, but it's really not as bad as people think. He wasn't playing his full minutes, and we know what Sabonis is capable of doing, right? In terms of his average, he's a guy who can go out and get you 15 to 20 points and double-digit rebounds if he wants to, if he needs to. So, yeah, it is a little discouraging after the way that the last playoff run ended into a preseason game where he didn't really perform quite as well. There is assuredly going to be a lot of sort of negativity there, but I think it's premature. It's an overreaction. Sabonis is almost certainly going to get right by the time the regular season starts. So, I wouldn't be overly concerned on that front. Speaking of which, moving things over to the Atlanta Hawks here. I don't know. Some people ragging on the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray duo because they did not play well in their first preseason game. And, there's a lot of concern there because the Hawks basically telegraphed to the league that duo is the future of this team when they traded John Collins, right? They wanted the ball in the guard duo's hands more often than it already was, which was a pretty high amount, actually. So this duo has to lead the team, and they go out in their first preseason game and they shoot a combined 4 of 15. Not great, right? Both players had bad shooting nights, and that's the concern. If the Hawks are going to go all in on Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, what happens if they both don't shoot well in the same night? Well, the answer is that the Hawks may lose, but I don't know how likely that is, that they both struggle to the degree that they did on any sort of consistent basis. Maybe one of them has an off night here or there, but you would assume the likelihood of both pretty prolific shooters just kind of stinking it up in a particular game is incredibly unlikely. So, it'll happen every once in a while, but not to the consistency that I think people are worried about here. So they'll be fine in terms of the strategy. I don't know about the results. But that moves us into the final point here. It is the Houston Rockets we're talking about, and I cannot believe I'm oversaying this, or I'm even saying this, but the overreaction is that Dillon Brooks is going to be a problem for this team. He was ejected 5 minutes into the Rockets' first preseason game because he hit an opposing player in the groin. Yeah, it sounds pretty bad, because it is pretty bad. However, I think that this is maybe too much of an overreaction. I think people are reading too much into this, not because what he did wasn't bad. What he did was really dumb, right? You punch a player in the groin in a preseason game. That's not a good sign. I think the overreaction comes from people assuming that this is going to happen all season long, that this will be a continuous problem for the Rockets to deal with, and I don't think that's going to be the case. It won't go away entirely. Dillon Brooks will still say and do some dumb things, but I refuse to believe that Dillon Brooks is so, I don't want to say dumb, that's a little harsh, but so unaware of his situation that he continues to do this, right? He went from the Grizzlies to the Rockets, and no offense to this is going to be offensive, but no offense intended to the Rockets. As they are currently constructed, they're one of the worst teams in the league. They had one of the worst records in the league last season. Brooks going from the Grizzlies to the Rockets is falling downwards on the ladder, right? So I don't think Brooks is so unaware of his situation that he pulls these shenanigans to the point where the Rockets actually get rid of him. Because if the Rockets get rid of you, there won't be too many opportunities left, right? The Rockets were willing to take a chance on him because they're rebuilding. Their expectations aren't fantastic, right? So I think at a certain point he realizes that if he keeps doing some of the things he's doing, his reputation might just keep him out of the league, and I think he's smart enough to avoid that. Really giving Dillon Brooks the benefit of the doubt here, but when it comes to maintaining your career as a professional basketball player, I think most of these guys can make the right decisions. Hopefully Brooks does too. So I think it's an overreaction. I don't think he's going to continue to do these things throughout the entirety of the regular season. If he does, he might just be out of the league. But that's it. That's what I got here. Obviously there's a lot more, but I kind of cut it down to try and not ramble on forever. So those are just some of the early maybe overreactions, hot takes from a group of fan bases who are obviously excited to see their teams back in action, but take 10 to 20% off of some of the hype there for most of these scenarios. But let me know what you think. Which of these scenarios do you think is maybe not, overreacting or a hot take? Which of these do you believe is the closest to being true, I guess is the phrase to use. Not really sure here, but which of these do you agree with that are maybe a little bit overhyped or being blown out of proportion, especially this early in the preseason? But let me know what you think. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.